We're on the raiding Antwerp, the Ford and General Motors plant at Antwerp, Belgium. We were flying probably at 20,000 feet or somewhere around there. Everybody was on oxygen at that altitude. We began to get flaked not long after we got into Europe. But we made our bomb run, and the lead plane was the primary bombardier. But so you had to go through the routine of opening the bomb bay doors, or maybe the bombardier had to go into the bomb bays and pull the safety pins out of them so they'd do their job when they hit the ground. So you open the doors of it when you're making your bomb run, and at that time you get a lot of flak because you were straight and level. Before that, you could was maneuvering up and down to keep out of the flak. Of course, one way that those guys on the ground got the exact height was their fighters would tell them, exactly how high it was. But sometimes just changing the height a little bit would miss the flag because they were pretty accurate with that stuff. So anyway, bombs away, and then turning away from the target, we got hit pretty hard with the fighters. Of course, the only consolation about that is the flak stopped because they didn't want to shoot down their own planes. And they were pretty good. They tell us that most of those that jumped us were Focke-Wulf's planes, some Messerschmitts, but they were what called the Yellow Nose, and that was Hermann Goering's squadron, which was only made up of aces, and they were good, but vulnerable. The 4 engines on the B-17 are from left to right, 1, 2, 3, 4. And the first signs is our number 2 engine was what we call running away. It was speeding up more than we had it going, and we were able to adjust that a little bit, but the main problem was our number 1 engine was on fire, and it was and we had no way to stop it particularly. You try to turn that engine off. By that time, I had told my crew to get ready to jump, and had sent my co-pilot to back to get ready to jump, and told him to make sure that the Galloway's going. Galloway was the radio operator. So I think about right there, and it's kind of hard to remember exactly where and at what time, what moment, but it was all happening fast, of course. That fire in the number 1 engine it exploded and blew the wing off, that half of the wing off there. So that put the plane in a flat spin, what we call a flat spin. It's not heading down spinning, it's just flat. And that was kind of the nature of that B-17 plane. In flying them, they were hard to get them to stall. When a plane stalls, it's gone. It's not enough lift or anything, speed, and it starts and it'll fall, and that's when they go into a spin. So at that point, it was time to abandon ship. And I know, of course, found out later, 2 guys jumped out, but The navigator had gone, I had ordered him out of the nose of the plane to the back, so he did that when we had time to do that. But the bombardier didn't. My situation was that the pilot and the co-pilot couldn't wear their parachutes, but they wore the harness for it, and the parachute itself was a smaller pack of parachute and under your seat, just under where you could reach down and get it. Well, I of course got out of my seat, and I could stand up partially there because that's the steps down to the nose of the plane where the bombardier and the navigator positions were. And I was able to pull the parachute out, and it has two big clips on it that clip onto the latches on your harness, and I couldn't get them both because of the centrifugal force. But I got one on, and I knew we were going down pretty fast, so I need to get out. Well, on the B-17, there's an escape hatch in the nose of the plane, the bottom side of the nose. And the bombardier evidently had already pulled the pins out of that door, and the door was gone, and you had an opening to get out. And he was sitting there. He had his parachute on, and I motioned to him to go, and he motioned me to go. And I, maybe if it's flashed through my hand, it's like standing in the doorway, you first. I looked out just briefly, and I noticed that number 2 engine propellers were still turning. It didn't look like they were turning fast, and I didn't know but what he had seen that and feared he might be falling into those propellers. So, I said, well, again, this is all flashing through in a few quick seconds. So I thought, well, if I go, maybe he'll go. So out I went, and turns out that he didn't go out. Well, falling through space from around 20,000 feet, and we were told that, if you do bail out, delay your opening your chute, because the Germans are not, certain ones of them might just love to do you away while you're floating down in the parachute. So I remembered that. And incidentally, you had on you a little small air oxygen bottle, and a little thing you just stuck in your mouth if you had to use it. I didn't even think about that. But so that I was going through the air, I was conscious enough, I remember, to say, "Hey, you're falling through air, just falling through space. No, remember it. Remember what's happening." So I did, and I noted that I was falling backwards, head first.